Hey everybody, you've just downloaded episode 12 of We Got This with Mark and Hal. And before you listen to this episode, which is a very fun one, I wanted to thank all the people who have taken the time to rate and review us on iTunes. We really, really appreciate it. And it may not seem like it, but that kind of stuff does help expose the show to new audiences. And that's the goal, for all of us to be together in a giant global community where we all listen to this podcast, except for me and Mark probably, because I don't think he knows what podcasts are. And I'm just busy. You guys, I'm flat out busy listening to all these other great podcasts and then making this one, although I do hear it while I'm editing. Why am I still talking to you about this? That's fine. You just want to hear the episode, and I'm going to let you do it right now. Episode 12 of We Got This with Mark and Hal. Hello, I'm Hal Lublin.
And I'm Mark Gagliardi.
Since the dawn of humanity, one issue has gone unsettled. With the fate of the world in the balance, we're here to settle, once and for all, who's the best Beatle?
That's right. Don't worry, everyone. We got this.
Podcast should have a theme song. Podcast should not have a theme song. Yes, they should. No, they shouldn't. They sound good. Yeah, but people are just going to skip past it. You know what? You're right. We got this.
All right. What's up, everybody?
Hey, everybody. What's up? What's up?
Oh, my God. Are we bringing What's Up back?
I just feel like you pulled it off, and I wanted to see if I could, but
Nope.
Nope, not at all.
Because I wasn't deliberately doing the old Budweiser thing. Was it Budweiser that did What's Up?
It was Budweiser.
Yeah. So we're not talking about Budweiser today.
No.
We are talking about, it's another blockbuster episode for us.
It is.
Not that we are expecting blockbuster ratings for this. Are they called ratings?
Sure. Let's call them that.
Sure, we'll call them ratings.
What are the overnights?
To the Nielsen family who's listening right now, hello.
Yes.
No, but about blockbusters. We previously did an episode about Star Wars for May the 4th, which were released on May the 5th.
Yes.
Like a couple of good slackers. And today we're going to talk about the Beatles.
Yes.
The Beatles. John, Paul, George, and Ringo.
Yes.
And also Pete Best and Stu Sutcliffe.
Yes. And Billy Preston every once in a while when he would sit in.
Sure. So the question is, who was the best Beatle?
Sure.
Do you have an idea in mind?
I do. Here's the funny thing. I was talking to my father about this, who's just started listening to the podcast.
Oh, really?
And is catching up.
Oh, hi, Bill.
Yeah. How you doing, Dad? He's very much enjoying it, but I told him we were going to talk about which one the best Beatle was. And he was trying to guess what I would think. And he's like, well, I don't know if it's going to be John, Paul, or George.
Oh, that's cold.
Just poor Ringo.
Poor Ringo.
Left out in the rain.
I know. I mean, Ringo did come in late.
He did.
But Ringo is, and I talked to a friend of mine about this today. I also did a little homework on this, and asked around and got people's ideas. And a buddy of mine said this today. My friend Tom said, I think of Ringo as the heartbeat of the Beatles.
Sure.
I mean, he was the drummer. He was literally the beat, and also the naive kid, gung ho. He was the driving force that kept the blood flowing of the Beatles.
Sure.
And then he went on to say that Paul was the face. This was, I don't know where he got this information, but it made sense to me when he said Paul was the face. For those who don't know, the Beatles are Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, and
Ringo Starr.
Thank you, Ringo Starr.
Oh, poor Ringo.
That Paul was the face, John was the brain, George was the soul, and Ringo was the heart.
Interesting.
Which I thought was an interesting way of putting it. Yeah. So I guess really this debate that we're having today is what's the most important? The brain, the face, the heart, or the soul?
I kind of take issue with that. Some people could mix those around a little bit.
Sure.
They certainly all brought a lot. Like you said, Ringo definitely was the sort of the backbone of all of those songs. He wasn't the flashiest drummer, but he had that Mercy beat.
And he kept them going. He largely defined their rock and roll sound.
Yeah, he's kind of underrated.
Though, their in doing my homework, this was another thing that I loved. It was their first number one, Please Please Me, happened because they said, hey, why don't you take it up? Why don't you take the pace up a little bit? Their producer said that. So maybe it wasn't Ringo. It was just Ringo obeying orders really well.
And to be fair, they were all on speed back then. So they were probably,
you really can mark the Beatles by their drug use.
Yes.
They were all on speed in the early years.
Yes.
And then they all tried LSD.
Yes.
And then they all got into pot for a while.
Yeah.
And then they stopped doing drugs and broke up.
yeah. And
See,
then,
let that be a lesson to everyone. Let that be a lesson to you, Hal.
what?
Straight edge Hal. Try drugs.
No, this is a terrible.
This is a
message.
terrible message that we're
I can't
giving to
believe
the
you're
world.
doing this. Is that what you took away from the Beatles? Not the music? It's drugs are awesome, everybody.
Yeah. If you want to pull out an album to pick the stems and seeds out of your pot, use Rubber Soul. Nobody picks stems and seeds out of pot anymore, though. That's a cliche thing.
Yeah, you're a real pot grandpa.
Okay. So how should we structure this? Because this is going to be, this could be a very wide ranging, far encompassing. Do you want to go one by one? Start with Ringo?
Let's go one by one. Let's break them down. Let's discuss their contributions.
Okay.
Because I definitely have
Their
clear
contributions
idea.
and their detriments.
Sure.
I have a clear idea as well.
Okay. So Ringo, and we can discuss their post Beatles work as well. I
Yes.
know that John has the shortest lifespan, but he's still accomplished a great deal outside
Yes.
of the Beatles as well as within them.
Because the Beatles only were around from 1960 to 1970.
Yes.
One decade. That was it. So let's start with Ringo. What is Ringo's late work? I remember seeing him in the 80s, and I don't think I've ever seen him not in sunglasses.
So here are a few. Here are a few things he's done.
Okay.
One is he released an album of songs, I think in the 70s. I think it might have been one of his first solo albums of covers from songs from the 50s and 60s. And that was a tribute for his mother, I believe.
Okay. See, he's the sweetest Beatle.
Yeah.
He's the Sweetle.
And all of the other Beatles wrote for him.
Yeah.
Afterwards. So despite whatever their relationships may have been strained among one another, they all rallied around Ringo and wrote for him and collaborated with him.
Yes. Well, even in the early days, they wanted to make sure he was singing to give him the legitimacy.
There's one Ringo song on every album that he sings. Then
the worst song.
Yeah, here are some other. Well, that's not true. Yellow Submarine, is that the worst song? Fair enough.
Yellow Submarine is the one that the youngest children do in music class. As they get older and move into 4th and 5th grade and start playing the recorder, then they get to move to more advanced Beatles songs.
Like Norwegian Wood.
Yeah. Well, that's when you get to sitar in like 11th grade. You're still taking music class and like banging sticks together in 11th grade, right?
I had the worst sitar teacher in 11th grade.
I loved music class as a kid. Miss McClellan was it Mr. Thompson? We had Miss McClellan.
The sitar teacher.
Oh, jeez. She was in the Knoxville Symphony Orchestra, and I thought that was the coolest thing that we had a lady from the real symphony as our music teacher.
Was she very uptight? Like everybody keep beat. Like
yeah, and she was married to or dating a Ghostbuster at the time. No, she was just a sweet lady. We were little kids. Like she was a sweet lady from the symphonies. Like, I'm going to teach little kids music.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah, she was a great lady.
So that's sort of what Ringo is in a way.
He's the Miss McClellan. He's the childhood music teacher.
Yeah.
Ringo's the one that would pass out all the percussion instruments to the kids in class. Like, you wanted to get the little drum. You didn't want the sticks. Everybody got sticks.
Here's your blokes. He also did Weight of the World. That was another single of his, and La Di Da. Those are two singles. He also tours the country. I think he still does this with the All-Star Band, where he takes people I
remember the All-Star Band.
Like he would bring in rock artists from other famous bands of the 60s, and they would each play the best of. I actually got to see them. He's the only Beatle I've seen in concert, and that I went to see that show, and it was
Did he have a Beatle magnetism to him?
He did.
Well, he's a Beatle.
He's a Beatle. Yeah. He gets out there. You're like, oh my.
I mean, you still make fun of him. He's Ringo. Everybody makes fun of Ringo, but he's still a Beatle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Peace and blessings.
Probably, yeah. Peace and love.
Peace and love.
That's probably, if you don't know what we're referencing, he made a YouTube video several years ago in which he essentially said he was something to the effect of, after the 1st of May, no more autographs. Anything sent to me will be tossed. But in the middle, he peppers it with, I'm warning you with peace and love. And he starts with peace and love, peace and love. He says peace and love about 1 million times. That's not an exaggeration in a
Hal, hold on
video.
a second.
Yes.
That is an exaggeration.
No, he has a horrendous OCD. At the end, he just goes peace and love, peace and love, peace and love, peace and love.
Even at that rate, 1 million times would take a while.
Well, he's a drummer. He can do it very quickly.
Yeah, no, I get it. I don't mean to put you on blast, Lublin.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Is that from like a Kool-Aid commercial or something?
It's from Help.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's right.
Don't put me on blast, Paul.
I can't get these rings off my fingers.
Oh, Ringo.
That was the whole plot of Help, was Ringo had a ring stuck on his finger that belonged to like a sheik or something. Like, this is our mystical ring.
Who wrote this movie? It's like, hey, what's this guy's name? Ringo? All right, give him a ring. What next? All right. So Ringo contributed the least.
Sure. You could say that in terms of a song. He wasn't much of a songwriter. Mm-hmm. Certainly not. I mean, it's hard. Even George had trouble overcoming the team of Lennon and McCartney in the early days in terms of getting songs through. Mm-hmm. But he certainly didn't contribute much as a songwriter.
Right. But he was the heartbeat.
He was the heartbeat.
Okay.
Okay. So who do we move on to next?
Let's go in reverse order of hiring. How's that? So we'll go to George Harrison next.
Yes.
The soul of the Beatles.
Okay. You say that.
I say that.
Okay.
Sure. George Harrison, I like George Harrison. I feel like George Harrison is the one that pushed them musically, but did it quietly. You know what I mean? He's the quiet one in there. He's the one that would be like, hey, why don't we try sitar on this song?
Yeah.
Or why don't we try slowing that one down? Or maybe we should go to India and stay for a while. Like, he's the guy that I feel like he's in that road movie of the four of them. He's the one that would come up with the crazy plot, like the crazy scheme to do something super spiritually, and super out there. Like, why don't we just stay in this field for a while and it'll come to us? Like, that's George Harrison in my mind. And maybe it's just because I have the image of him sitting with a sitar, in India in a Nehru jacket in my brain is the image that when I think of the Beatles, if I think of Paul, I think of early 60s. If I think of Ringo, I think of early 60s, mop tops and suits. When I think of George, I think of late 60s and crazy psychedelia.
Sure. That's fair. He definitely, that was sort of his breakout period where he really started, contributing more songwriting wise. Not that he didn't have ability before, but he was developing his own voice and ready to sort of all the Beatles of all four of the Beatles when they broke up, he probably benefited the most in terms of, I finally have an outlet for all these songs I've written. That's why his first album was a double album.
Because he'd been holding that hose bent in half for so long that it had created that giant water bubble on one side, like only hoses in cartoons have. And then when he straightened it out, it like shot like a fire hose and shot him out of frame. I don't know why he's a cartoon in a very specific shot in my brain right now.
Well, it makes sense. It's a perfect parallel. But he's also, I think, one of the most underrated rock guitarists in history.
How so?
Because he was extremely talented. And when you're in a group like the Beatles, where everybody is really talented, not only singers, but also as musicians, it's easy to sort of fall behind. And I think he gets his due. He's gotten his due more over time, but Clapton is a great guitarist. Jimmy Page is a great guitarist, but George Harrison absolutely belongs in that conversation. I don't think he gets put there often enough.
Well, I think what he does that's so nice is, as opposed to some of the guys that are just known for shredding, and it's that, okay, now is your turn to do your thing.
Yeah.
It never seemed like it was about that. It seemed like George Harrison looked for what a song needed musically and put it in there.
Yes. Yeah.
Does that make sense? It's not like, here's a chance for you to show off, Eric Clapton, which he did brilliantly.
Sure.
Or even like, later on acts like Steve Vai and Eddie Van Halen and guys that would just shred on guitars. His was, I think the song needs this right here. Like, that's sort of the vibe that I get from it. I'm going to keep doing this Beatle voice a lot, where I just kind of like say a few things and lean into the microphone real quiet like. But all of my Beatles are going to sound exactly the same.
See, my George Harrison impression is based off of like, I think it was the first Gulf War. He's being interviewed. He's like, all these people here, they're crackers. They come out and they're like, that was his thing. Everything was crack. It's just crackers, what they're doing here.
Why does he sound like a sidekick to Voldemort? You did like evil henchman voice. Is George Harrison the evil henchman of the band?
I'm now whispering because of you. Yes, he is. We're all here. We're a bunch of Death Eaters, and we're all crackers, and we're going to catch Harry Potter, and we're going to kill him. It's going to be crackers. Peace and love. Peace and love.
Shut up, Ringo.
All right, I'll be over here. Any broom sent to me after the 1st of May will get tossed. I'm warning you with peace and love.
How did he turn into the sidekick to a villain?
He's also turned into the anteater from Pink Panther. That Pink Panther is all over the place, which is basically Jackie Mason.
Yeah, which is also
Ringo stars Jackie Mason.
Wait a minute, I loved him in Caddyshack too.
You're the one.
Be the ball, be the ball, be the ball, be the ball, be the ball.
No. If you haven't seen Caddyshack 2, that's fine. You don't have to.
Yes, you do.
But you'll get what we're doing.
Sure. It's like, well, we can't get Dangerfield. Yeah, get Jackie Mason. He's Dangerfield-ish.
I feel like this is the episode where we're going to lose everybody. Caddyshack 2 references, that's too much.
All right, let's get back to the Beatles then.
Go ahead. George.
What else do we have to say about George?
Post-Beatles work. What about the concert for Bangladesh?
Talk about I don't know about the concert for Bangladesh. I've heard it's one of those things that's in my mind.
A benefit he put together in the early 70s. I want to say 1973.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he won a Grammy for that.
Mm-hmm.
But Paul appeared on that album, and Ringo, and a bunch of musical all-stars. And that was the start of his sort of socially conscious. I believe he was at Live Aid as well.
Would you consider him to be the most selfless of the Beatles?
Maybe so, because I think his work is a little bit quieter. I think a lot of John's activist stuff, while it was done with good intentions, became a little bit of a media circus.
Mm-hmm.
But also he wrote maybe the most infectious song of the 80s, which is I Got My Mind Set
on You.
Yeah, and it's the same thing over and over again.
In my mind, that song, the version that I think of first of that song is, this song is just 6 words long. The Weird Al version. I think of that before I think of George Harrison's version.
It's such a great parody, but it's also true. Like, It doesn't matter how long the song is, how many words there are, you get pulled into it. And it had the great music video where he's sitting in an easy chair with a bunch of taxidermy behind him that sings they sing the "Set on You."
I remember that as a photo from it. I don't remember that video, but I remember seeing a photo of him in the chair with the taxidermy as was it the album cover or maybe like just a promotional photo for the single? Or?
No, it must have been a promotional photo. The album was Cloud 9 and the cover was him wearing I think reflective sunglasses with the cloudy sky reflected in them. But that video,
that's so it sounds so non-iconic the way you describe it, where all of the Beatles like late covers are such iconic album covers. You're like, no, it's one of the Beatles doing a sunglass thing like an 80s movie.
Is that what I sound like?
Yeah.
I never know.
This is Hal Lublin. This is my Hal Lublin impression.
Gosh, this is terrible. It's really crackers what Hal Lublin sounds like. Let's get him, Voldemort. Also, he had a great song, the name of which is blanking out on me, that he wrote, all those years ago, which was his tribute to John Lennon that he wrote in like 81, 82.
Oh, that's
really, if you've not heard that song, I would recommend looking it up. It's got a really nice music video too, which has a lot of vintage Beatle clips. But he certainly had a really good career, and his music towards the end of the Beatles run, you could make the case that he was doing some of the best songwriting work, that those last 4 years or so where he did Here Comes the Sun. And,
the late Beatles music is really, it's remarkable. All of the and I've recently started breaking down Beatles songs into eras because I've never been an album guy. I've always been with the Beatles, I was, there's always the debate, which could be another episode, the Elvis or the Beatles debate. I was always an Elvis guy.
Sure.
But I always liked the Beatles, and I knew them more by individual song. Like, I had a greatest hits album as a kid of the Beatles.
Was it the one with the four of them leaning over the Capitol Records, the railing?
No, but I know that greatest hits album.
Yeah.
The one I had was like a double disc that just had, the Beatles and I think the Apple in the background.
Okay.
So that was how I knew the Beatles as a kid, was just individual songs. now, I have a record player at home that I love, and I'm finally introducing myself to vinyl and full albums. And, my roommate in New York, her father gave her all of his old Beatles albums. And those have become my favorite vinyl to listen to, regardless of what, if I'm at home for a while, like I'm cooking or cleaning or whatever I'm doing at home, I will usually turn on a Beatles album. It'll usually be Rubber Soul or Abbey Road.
Yep.
But I will turn on a full vinyl album. And there's something about that I just really, really enjoy. So yeah, George, those are the later albums. Even, I mean, beyond, Abbey Road was later, but beyond Rubber Soul, that was when, George was doing more stuff.
Yeah. One black mark on George Harrison for me is Within You Without You on Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, which is the sitar that I was walking.
Which you currently sound like a drunk at the end of a bar.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that is the one I'm thinking of. I know he's responsible for the sitar song that's on Sgt. Pepper's.
He's responsible for all the sitar stuff.
Well, John Lennon has that song that's on not Rubber Soul, Revolver. I'm looking it up right now. I want to make sure that I have the right track.
While you're looking this up.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
I think it's interesting that we're going in reverse order of hiring of the Beatles.
Yes.
Because based on their ages, their reverse order of hiring, I don't know how old Ringo is in comparison to the rest of them.
Okay.
But it still feels like he's the permanent freshman. But at one point there was, if you look at the ages they were when they started, John Lennon was a senior, Paul McCartney was a junior, and, if we were using American things, I think I have this timeline right.
Yeah.
If we were using American schooling, John was a senior, Paul was a junior, and George was a sophomore.
Yes, sophomore, freshman, sure.
Right around when they started.
Yes.
So their order of coming into the band and the order of the hierarchy that we're doing right now really is almost like that high school dynamic.
Yes.
And I wonder if that ever had a big factor in how they dealt with each other. Cause I know George had to audition several times and try to convince John to put him in the band.
Yeah. I think probably earlier on, I'm sure by the time they
evened out.
By the time they were famous, they had worked together as a group. They had been to Germany and then had sort of conquered the club scene in Liverpool, and around London. So I'm sure there's probably some part of that dynamic that was always around. Mm-hmm. But also,
do you think there was ever a chip on George's shoulder because he had to audition for John? Like, John's the only one that at one point they were going under the name John and the Blanks. I don't even remember what the
Quarrymen?
No. After the Quarrymen.
After the Quarrymen?
I don't remember. But it was
now you're just making up facts. But back when they were
back when they played themselves as John and the Abstracts.
Yeah, sure.
Literally, I just looked behind you for anything in the room and I saw an abstract painting.
Wow, you really Kaiser Soze'd me there.
Yes, I did. Oh, I was John Lennon the whole time.
Oh man.
I was John Lennon the whole time.
But John Lennon doesn't have a Wait a minute.
Caddyshack 2.
I wish that had been the end of Usual Suspects.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
But it was Chaz Palminteri, so it would have been, wait a minute. That's my
that
Chaz.
Sounds like Voldemort's assistant right there. Like his evil sidekick.
All right. Have we exhausted George?
We have. He's very tired.
Let's talk about Paul McCartney.
Sure.
I enjoy Paul McCartney. He is the face.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my problem with Paul McCartney.
Okay.
I will say first what I love about Paul McCartney.
Please do.
I do think he's an incredible songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
He has had, the most longevity, and the most high profile longevity.
Yes.
Ringo has been around as well. The two of them are both around, but Paul is the one that is constantly focused on pushing forward in music.
Yep.
I think that he's a brilliant songwriter. I think that he's incredibly charming and really gave the Beatles much of their original charm factor.
Yep.
And he's funny. He's a really funny guy.
Very witty.
On television interviews. He's always really fun. He is also responsible for some of the greatest songs ever recorded.
Yes.
However, Paul McCartney is responsible for the worst song ever to get played on the radio.
If it's that Christmas song,
it is 100% that terrible, written by a 5-year-old Christmas song.
you and I are about to go heads up, son. I love that
Are you
song.
kidding me?
I love
it sounds
it.
like Paul McCartney said, "Hey, I'm going to go to a kindergarten, give them each a crayon and they can draw a note on this staff of sheet music. And then we'll just take the best 3 and repeat them over and over again. Hey, little kid, write a song on the spot. Okay. Da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Da-da-da-da, da-da, da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. It's the worst song ever recorded, Hal Lublin.
There's something so simple about it.
Yes, simplistic, simple, childish, childlike crap.
I thought you were going to say the crap was some of his later work with the Beatles, some of his White Album stuff, like Obla Di Obla Da.
Obla Di's pretty dumb. That kind of Obla Di was the appetizer for the banality and juvenility of his Christmas tune.
Well, we're gonna have to agree to disagree on the Christmas tune.
Okay.
For now. By the way, I want to throw in real quick. This is Violet Sunflower was who suggested.
Oh, I'm
this
sorry,
episode.
Violet, that we didn't.
We got so excited we jumped right in.
We did jump right in. I want to know if Violet Sunflower is a first name and a last name, or like just one handle. Like, do I
It's
just?
it's a Twitter handle. So
It's Twitter
all one
handle,
name.
but is it? But like, do you still treat it like first name, last name? Let us know.
Sort of, yeah. Will you let us know?
Thank you. If you're still listening, we may have lost you with the comic books episode. No, we haven't heard that yet. Have
Yeah,
we?
that's coming later. Spoiler alert, everybody.
It's terrible. No, it's great.
We probably lost you with Caddyshack too, to be fair. But that song aside, he also, probably of all the Beatles has had the most success, because he founded another huge band in Wings.
Yes.
And he wrote Band on the Run.
A great song.
Maybe I'm Amazed.
Live and Let Die.
Live and Let Die. Yeah, he wrote a James Bond theme. For my money, the best James Bond theme.
It's a great theme.
But
Boy, does he lose points with me for that one song.
But he collaborated with Stevie Wonder.
Yes.
He collaborated with Michael Jackson.
He did the most interesting music, after being a Beatle, I think.
And he's very he has this thing when I swear, I don't think I've seen him in public in the last 20 years and had him not chewing gum. Like he's just he's that level of cool where it's like, he just is like chewing gum everywhere is either really annoying or really cool.
Yeah.
He makes it
cool. And I will say, here's a thing in favor of Paul. When I think of the Beatles, he is the first picture that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
I don't think of John or George or Ringo. It's Ringo, right?
Yes. Ringor.
Yes.
Ringo.
Because he is a He-Man character.
He's a He-Man character.
Ringor.
This evil ring will destroy He-Man.
Hey, what's his name? Ringo? All right, so we're going to call him Ringor and give him a ring. Next.
I'm warning you with peace and love. Any battle cat sent after the 1st of May will be tossed.
Does he mean postmarked or like arrive at his place?
I think arrive.
Oh, wow.
Check the postmarks on all these parcels so we can decide which ones I'm going to sign. I'm very busy. I'm asking you with peace and love. So, Hall also, he recently collaborated with Kanye West.
Oh, another point against.
That was either going to be a point for or a point against.
Let's go back to the Beatles, though. We're talking about the best Beatle. Let's stick with his Beatles work.
Yeah. How about Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band? Do you like that album?
I do love that album.
The idea of doing a concept album was his idea.
Yes?
Yes. Borrowed, of course, from Brian Wilson because the Beach Boys were doing Pet Sounds.
Which one came first?
Pet Sounds came first.
So Pet Sounds came first, then Sgt. Pepper's, and then Brian Wilson had his breakdown because he was trying to make Smile and went crazy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a rough timeline, but those guys fed off one another and helped sort of drive one
Which is interesting because I don't think of the Beach Boys. I love the Beach Boys. I don't think of them nearly on the same level.
Yes.
But I guess in many ways they were with Pet Sounds. That's a great album.
You can also give Paul credit for keeping the Beatles together as long as they did. They probably would have split up earlier if he'd not been driving them to sort of stick together and keep doing things. And
he was the Hal Lublin of the Beatles. He was the one that said, "Hey, dum-dum, we're recording tonight."
How many text messages did I have to send you at your request?
Probably like 15. I told Hal, he's like, we're going to record Monday at 6. I was like, all right, I'm going to need you to text me that. He's like, all right. I said, I mean like every hour. So for the past few days, I've been getting texts constantly. 6 p.m. Monday, 6 p.m. Monday, 6 p.m. Monday. So, we started at 8:30 on Monday.
Yeah. The great thing about the iPhone is just with one thumb, you can copy and paste over and over again and just keep sending the same text. Very simple.
And also I can just type K. No, I refuse to type just a K. I always do an O and a K
well, you're a gentleman.
if I'm going to be that brief.
Yeah. One more thing for Paul. Mm-hmm. Two more.
There's a lot for Paul. Paul is great. Paul is still writing cool songs. I don't mean to interrupt. Paul just wrote a song called My Valentine that is beautiful. That was sent to me around Valentine's Day by Juliana, which so that song has a special place for me.
Yeah.
I like Paul. It's just the one song, but I think he is the embodiment of the Beatles.
Well, of the Lennon-McCartney partnership, he's definitely the more saccharine. Mm-hmm. He was sort of the heart and Lennon was more the soul. And you see when they're apart, neither of them are as good as they were together because they were such a great yin and yang. But Paul was the first of the four Beatles to have his own sort of breakout song, which was Yesterday, which he wrote by himself, but shared credit with the rest of the band because that was how they did it. Mm-hmm. But they encouraged him to, he played it on Ed Sullivan at their behest by himself.
I didn't know that.
Just him and a guitar. And then Blackbird, which is one of my favorite songs, is a Paul song. Of course, towards the White Album, which is all four Beatles sort of doing their own thing. Yeah. He was playing guitar and drums and bass and whatever and piano.
I feel like there's going to be so many times, and there have been so many times, when thinking about who the best Beatle was. You mentioned, well, this was a Paul song. Yesterday was a Paul song.
Yes.
Blackbird was a Paul song. So any song that you mentioned being from a specific Beatle, I have the same reaction every time. It's like, well, this was a John song. Oh, I love that song.
Yeah.
Like they all get that exact same reaction and it's a point in all of their favor. So really it could just be who wrote the most Beatles songs because they're all awesome.
That's true.
Except for the ones Ringo did. Exactly. It is Ringo, right?
Poor Ringo. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Roger? That doesn't seem right.
Oh, no. You're thinking of Roger Taylor. He's the worst member of Queen. Weird that Ringo did like a Baby Talk song and Roger Taylor did Radio Gaga.
It's just the symptom of being that member of the band. One more Paul thing.
Okay.
And then we can move on to Mr. Lennon. And that is when Stu Sutcliffe quit the band, they had three people playing guitar, and George didn't want to switch to bass, and John didn't want to switch to bass. So Paul said, all right, then I'll learn how to do it. And he became one of the most underrated bass players in rock and roll. He's a very good bass player.
So, screw George Harrison. He is the selfless Beatle.
He could be.
All right.
And that wound up like he was willing to do it and did it left-handed, which for him wasn't a big deal, but is very impressive to me because he's right-handed.
Because as a right-handed guy, you look at this guy and you're like, look at him. He can play the bass backwards.
Look, if you have Beatles rock band, that's one of the achievements is you play it upside down. You have to play a song left-handed and get a certain
Did you have
score.
Beatles rock band?
Yes. Oh man. Boy, do I love that. I can still break it out. It's one of the few games.
You have Rock Band? Why are we not playing Rock Band right now?
I don't know why we're not playing, because we're doing this podcast.
Let's just play Rock Band. Can we play Rock Band while we do it?
More important than Rock Band.
This is why you are the Paul McCartney.
I have to keep driving us forward. I have to keep the band together. But that's
That's why I love you, Hal.
I love you. This is one of the few Rock Band games, though, that I can play well, because I know all the songs.
Sure.
So.
You're not good at the Anthrax version? With the double bass pedal?
Yeah, I can't play, I'm the Man on Rock Band very well.
All right, moving on.
Yes.
John Lennon.
John Lennon, the man who founded the Beatles.
Yes.
With his skiffle band, the Quarrymen.
He is the George Washington of the Beatles.
Yes, and he looks the most like George Washington.
And he does. The Beatles. Yeah.
Will somebody will one of our fans please Photoshop John Lennon's face onto the $1 bill?
We've been doing a lot of this asking people to just randomly tweet.
I assume they enjoy doing it.
Yes, I love that. I feel bad asking though. I love just seeing things. I love that. So John Lennon, the other half of the Lennon-McCartney duo, what are some of John's, you mentioned songs that are specifically Paul's. Are there songs that are specifically Beatles era, John's songs that you don't think of as collaborations?
Norwegian Wood, I think of as a John song, that coming out of John. I mean, the Ballad of John and Yoko, which is...
Was that a Beatles tune though, or was that after?
That was a Beatles tune.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And there's still argument that Yoko was a problem.
Yeah, I mean,
like if you and I were in a band and you were like, "Hey, I've got this song I want to do. It's called The Ballad of Hal and Jen." Like, really? Man, this is the Beatles, dude. This is all right. I guess we'll do your "We're a Couple" song.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we don't have to blame Yoko for breaking up the Beatles. They were probably heading in that direction anyway. Yes. She may have helped separate them a little bit quicker, but
I don't blame Yoko though.
No,
I blame John. Like Yoko would, if Yoko's like, "Are you sure it's cool for me?" That's my Yoko Ono impression.
That's really good,
sure it's cool for? She sounds like Bjork. To go into the studio with you? "Oh yeah, sure, it's fine. All the guys love it. We bring our girlfriends all the time." Like, you know, it was John that said it was cool.
Yes.
It's not like Yoko just barged her way in. I hope not.
Look, we all have that buddy that cannot say no to their significant other.
Yeah.
And it creates problems.
Wait, yeah, everybody says they have that buddy, but none of my friends ever say, you know, I've never noticed that. I've never had that.
No, I haven't. I think it's more, but the problem.
I'm just kidding. That was a terrible attemst at being that guy. Because I'm also one of those guys who cannot say no.
Right. But that's not the significant other's fault. That's just like, I really want to make this person happy and it makes me happy to have them around.
Yes. We're giving John a lot of credit for this.
So John broke up the Beatles.
John broke up the Beatles. Here. Yeah.
Shocker, everybody.
We got this. John Lennon broke up the Beatles.
Yes. I Am the Walrus. That is a classic John tune.
Mm-hmm.
That, or as I think of it, that's what I think of when I think of John Lennon. Geez, what are some other, I mean, there are so many great ones. I Want You feels like a John song, which is a fantastic song that I think people, there really are no deep cuts when it comes to the Beatles, but that is probably a deeper cut off of Abbey Road.
I don't, cause Abbey Road's one of the ones that is in my rotation. Yeah. So I don't ever think of that as a deep cut.
Right.
I just think of it as another album track.
And then, I mean, his work out of the Beatles.
Imagine.
Yeah.
Come on.
Imagine's probably the biggest.
Everybody, all the ex-Beatles had songs, but, I Got My Mind Set on You, Band on the Run, whatever Ronnie was doing. None of those.
Ringo, man.
None of those are Imagine. You know what I mean?
That is definitely, an anthem of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
It's I'm
a big fan of anthemic songs. Like an anthem, like any song where people will hold up a lighter or march. Like that's my jam. Like,
what about
get the people
Hey
going.
Jude, though?
Hey Jude is an anthem.
That's a Paul.
Yeah.
That's a Paul.
Is that
song.
A Paul song?
Yeah.
Oh man, we might be leaning in a direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's, just to bring up, like, he did anthemic work just more with the Beatles. And then when he went outside, he was doing
crap. Utter holiday crap.
The time is right. The story.
That is literally the melody of the verse of that song.
Now, when you do it, it does sound like a kid on a car trip.
Yeah.
Ice cream.
David After Dentist could have written that song.
Is this even real? Are we simply having a wonderful Christmas time? I feel weird.
All right. John Lennon. What else do we want to say about John?
Jeez,
I mean, there's so many.
You is a great song.
Well, I mean, aside from we
Instant Karma,
his contribution aside from songs that are John's songs.
Sure, Revolution, I think was his.
No, I'm saying song like aside from
the songs he did with the
right.
Beatles. What other things did he contribute
to? Yeah, aside from songs that are individually his. But no. By all means, continue with your list.
No, he was like that. He was the mind of the Beatles. He brought a lot of social consciousness into his work and was very cerebral, and that reflected. However, he has he has the other song, the companion song to Within You Without You. There's the other song that is practically unlistenable, which is Tomorrow Never Knows off of Revolver, and also Revolution Number 9, which is the one I think where if you play it backwards, you hear Paul is dead.
Right.
That is supposedly the one, because it's just it just garbles.
Once we get done with John, I want to tell you a quick story about the whole Paul is dead thing.
Guess what? We're done with John.
Are we really?
I want to hear it.
No, that can't be right. There's so much more about John. John, all right, let me throw a couple things out there.
Please.
As the original member, the very first Beatle, I feel like while Paul was the one driving the Beatles, as a band, it feels to me like in all that maybe it's just because he was the public face of it that talked about it the most. He was the one that was responsible for the changes and the changing sound. Or maybe it was all of the Beatles and I just remember him the most from interviews being the one talking about the changing sound of the Beatles. He
stands out. He was the one who said that they were bigger than Jesus, which is an out of context quote, not taken the way it was.
No, they were saying that he was saying that all of them individually were physically taller than Jesus.
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
Except for Reginald.
Poor guy.
We are being so mean to an icon.
Just wait until
who might hear this. I really hope he does.
You're going to mail him. Sorry, I'm not listening to any podcast episodes sent to me after the 1st of May. Will be tossed.
What if he changes his mind and we send him, we're like, hey, we put our podcast episode on a CD for you. Why don't you give it a listen? He's like, oh, someone sent me a CD. You know what? Just this once, and mails it back to us. Like, that's not even what we wanted you to do. It's not your music.
We got his autograph. Quick, to eBay. Because we're those guys.
All right. So yeah, maybe it's not that John was the driving force behind because it had to be a conscious decision driven by someone to say, we are going to push the boundaries of pop music. Or is that a goal of every band?
I think it's a goal of a lot of bands, and they certainly they were very beholden to their early influences, and that stayed with them throughout their entire careers. But they broke out, and they were all pioneers. And as a group, they kind of moved forward. That's why it's almost hard to pick out. You want to say the sum is greater than the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But these 4 people were so important in the musical landscape that it's hard to say that any one of them
3 people.
All right, look, 3.5. Can we at least negotiate this? Oh,
he's like the kid from that CBS show. Tonight on CBS, John, Paul, George, and Ringo in 3.5 Men.
Oh, that poor guy. He doesn't deserve this. He's a Beatle, for goodness sakes.
I know. All right. So let's be done with John so I can tell you this story.
I want to hear this story.
So in researching this episode, I was looking up a lot of articles on the Beatles. I know, we've started to research a little more on our episodes because these are very specific things as opposed to should you put ketchup on a hot dog, which is not really a specific. You don't really have to look up much on that.
No.
So in my researching, I saw an article popped up from 2015 from February, I believe it was February, that said, Paul McCartney died in 1966, claims Ringo Starr. And my first thought was, oh, this is an awesome feud. This is like, I didn't realize these two were feuding. Like, Paul died in 1966 and whatever came after that was just a shell of a man. Like, I thought it was meant as a metaphor. So I click on this article and this article pops up and it is, Ringo Starr claims that Paul McCartney died in a car accident in 1966 and was replaced by the winner of a Paul McCartney look-alike contest, and no one has ever been the wiser. Luckily, that guy was also a really great musician. And I thought, oh, this article is hilarious. What is this website? And I don't remember the name of it, but I probably shouldn't say it anyway. So I'm looking at this website thinking, this is a hilarious article. Is this like some sort of new Onion thing, like Clickhole, or, every once in a while there's a new comedy website that you're like, oh, this is great. I got to check this out. And like, so this article is lunacy. And then I'm looking at some of the other articles and like, oh, that one's hilarious. Oh, this article is, these people are serious. This website is a conspiracy theory, lunatic fringe website. And I went down a rabbit hole, just looking at assorted articles. So it was fun that the idea of Paul McCartney, being dead since 1966.
Yes.
Began in my mind. This one article began in my mind as, a metaphor for a breakup and a tumultuous relationship, turned into a hilarious joke article, turned into a lunatic conspiracy theory article. So I like to think that listening to the album backwards and hearing Paul is dead, that the people that heard that thought in those same pattern of threes. Like, oh wow, these guys must have been fighting. Oh wait, no, that's like a bit that they're doing. Oh no, somebody really thinks that Paul is dead. People really believe this.
The people who run that website listen to every album backwards, though. They're like, hey, if you listen to I Want a New Drug backwards, I think the stock market's going to crash. Quick, put it on the website. All the news that's fit to think up and type very quickly onto a website.
And I thought of the name of this website, and I'm going to say it because the name is dumb.
Do it.
Before it's news. Like, we're getting all of the scoops.
The one thing they got right was Ringo Starr to stop autographing everything mailed to him after May 1st.
Peace and love, quotes Beatle.
Peace and love. That's right. So we've talked about all the Beatles.
Yes.
And for the people listening at home, we know a lot more about the Beatles than this, but we can't do a 9-hour podcast.
Swe
We got to keep it tight.
You know more about the Beatles than this.
Yes.
This is mostly the extent of my knowledge of the Beatles.
Well, fair enough then. We're going to stop it here because I don't want to throw a bunch of extra stuff at you. So based on this, we need to decide who is the best Beatle of them all.
Based on this conversation, I feel like there's a clear winner that has emerged.
And who do you think it is?
I think it's Paul McCartney.
I agree. I agree that it's Paul McCartney. Listen, whether you love or hate the classic Christmas song.
Nope, I refuse to let you call that a classic Christmas song.
That has, much like Frosty the Snowman, occupied a special place in all of our hearts.
Oh. You know what it is? It's the opposite of Madam Trash Heap. Madam Trash Heap from Fraggle Rock. Madam Trash Heap from Fraggle Rock looks like garbage, but is really artistic and wise and important and classic. This song looks important and classic, but is really a giant trash heap. That said, Paul's the best Beatle.
That aside, Paul is the best Beatle. Can you love John? Can you love George? Can you love Ringo? Can you love Stu Sutcliffe or Pete Best? Yes, you can. You can love George Martin if you want to, but you can't say that they're the best. Only one person can be the best.
And only one of those people is the best Game of Thrones author.
No, that's George R.R. Martin.
What? Yeah, George Martin and George R.R. Martin are the same guy. Like Mark Gagliardi and Mark C. Gagliardi are the same guy.
Yeah, but it's not Mark C.C. Gagliardi.
Oh, C.C. Gags.
Is that
Elvis is better than the Beatles?
Oh, there we go. It was an Elvis reference. Yeah, I didn't even know. But Paul's the best Beatle, everybody. You're going to have to live with that. You're going to have to know it deep in your heart. And if you learn to accept it, you're going to be so much happier the next time you listen to any Beatles song, including Obla Di Obla Da or Maxwell's Silverhammer, which admittedly
I
are
like
not
Maxwell's
the best.
Silverhammer a lot.
Look, some people love it, just like the Christmas song. Some people would say that is a terrible song. Not me. I love the Beatles. I'm fine with it. See? We're simply having a Maxwell Silverhammer time. See?
Ridiculous.
That's the way it goes. Folks, there you have it. Paul McCartney, the best Beatle.
Yep.
Conclusively stated for you. There's still more arguments out there, though.
What?
We're going to settle them. I thought this was the last one, but there are a ton. We have like 30 in a Google Doc.
Oh, great.
Just waiting for us to tackle them. And we want to add to that Google Doc.
Yes.
Your name can be in a Google Doc that we both look at, by which I mean I look at it and then tell Mark what's on it.
Yeah.
So
that's not, we looked at your name isn't a selling point to anything for anyone.
You know what? It could be, look, if Ringo Starr looked at my name and signed that thing that I mailed him, I'd be a lot happier.
But that thing that you mailed him was a song that you wanted him to hear or a bit that you wanted him to hear.
I did. That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted.
It's this Christmas song I wrote, Ringo.
Yeah. So send us an email,
yes.
won't you?
Thank you.
WeGotThisPodcast@gmail.com.
Or you can reach out to us on Twitter and we will reach back at We Got This Tweets.
Or you can Facebook us on the Facebook at facebook.com/WeGotThisPodcast. We would like to thank some people.
Yes.
Ken Plume, who does the mixing and the mastering.
Also, many thanks as always to Mike Furman for our beautiful and hilarious theme song, and to Jonathan Dinerstein for his sublime underscoring of our opening.
And until next time, folks, don't worry.
We got this.
We got this.